New Babylon, One World Government Rising, Part 2. This will be a Bible study to go along with the New Babylon, One World Government Rising, Part 1 commentary lecture. In this study, we're going to go to the book of Revelation and see the prophecies and visions given to John by Jesus Christ concerning the rise of the Babylon of the end times, which is to say, the rise of the one world global government system. Let me first start off by saying that I don't ask you to believe me because I say these things. Rather, I ask that you go and check me out and to study your Father's Word for yourself. I ask that you go and obtain the tools to do this, such as a Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible, where you can check out the words from the Hebrew or the Greek language as they were originally penned in their original definitions. In this way you can understand the phrases, analogies, and manners of speech of the ancients who scribed these words. In this case, in the book of Revelation, it will be the Greek language. Greek and Hebrew are both fixed languages, which mean they do not waver. English is more of a language of transition. Greek and Hebrew have about 10,000 words each. In other words, each language has about 10,000 words. In the Greek language, roughly 4,000 of those would be Hellenist Street Greek. Nevertheless, they are part of the language as translated. What we're going to be reading from various places in the book of Revelation are spiritual messages, a set of types and examples, and seemingly non-connected visions, that is, to the English-only reader. But if you check these things out and look deeper than the literal, you will be able to see and understand. These prophecies of the book of Revelation are not always exactly in chronological order of time. In some cases, you will have the same vision repeated as different analogies. When reading, you will be taken to the future and back to the past. And you will jump back and forth to pivotal events and points in prophecy. It is given this way for a purpose. It is repetitive, so that there can be no mistake. And when you add this book to the rest of the books of the Bible and the types of examples set forth, even in the Old Testament, if you are a mind to study, you will be able to see the real truth. To understand these things, let me caution you not to get in a hurry and to always, I repeat, always ask your Father, our Father, to show you the truth and to show you and reveal to you the messages that He's trying to convey, so that you may understand His overall plan. Again, if you are an English-only reader of the Bible and do not look past the literal, you will most likely not understand this. Because when you read the Bible, you are reading a translation of a translation which is descended through many languages, has gone through many hands, and there are not always adequate words to carry a thought or to convey the full message. Again, there are over 10,000 words in each language, Hebrew and Greek. And when you try to cram those 20,000 words of those two languages into our 4,300 words of English, and I say 4,300 to 4,400, there are more words of English than that, but in daily commonality we only use about 43 to 4,400. There are many words we never even hardly utter. With that said, now let us go to the book of Revelation, chapter 12, and we're going to begin with verse 1. But before we do, as always, let's ask our Father for guidance and wisdom in prayer. Heavenly Father, King of the universe, we come before you this day and we ask that you open eyes and ears, Father, that you give us to drink of that living water and to eat of that hidden manna, that you open our minds, Father, to receive the truth and aid us in understanding, that we may better understand your overall plan, that we may escape deception. And we ask these things, Father, in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. So here we go, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven. I want you to keep that in mind where this is, in heaven. There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. This is symbolic, of course, of Mother Israel, the children of promise, referring to the election. Verse 2. And she, being with child, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. Now you're given this as an analogy of a flesh woman who is travailing with child. It is not literally a flesh woman. It is a spiritual connotation. It is Mother Israel. Verse 2. And she being with child, or verse 3, excuse me. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now this, of course, the red dragon is referring to Satan. But not only Satan, also his system. When I say system, I mean his political system. This is referring to the time when Lucifer became Satan and attempted to overthrow God. This is a pattern of the 7-headed, 10-horned beast which will appear again in this book of Revelation later. Only this second beast will appear here upon the earth. 7, of course, meaning completion in biblical numerics, but also referring to the 7 dominions or the 7 continents. And again, note that this beast is in heaven and that it has 7 crowns instead of 10 crowns, as we will be shown later. Verse 4. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. Now, whose tail? The dragon, the great red dragon. His tail drew. That means to draw in. It means deception. His tail deceived a third part of the stars of heaven. What are the stars of heaven? This is not referring to the celestial lights we see in the sky at night. Properly translated, this refers to the children of God, the angelics, before this earth age even. In other words, 1/3 of God's children were deceived by Satan when Satan first attempted to overthrow God. And did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, there's a great deal more said here. It has been Satan's plan all along to disrupt and to keep the Messiah from being born. If you understand what the true sin in the garden was between Adam and Eve and Satan, and the seed that were spawned from it, between Eve and Satan, then you must also understand that Satan has children upon this earth. They are quite frankly called the sons of Cain, the sons of the first murderer. And they have had a long-standing plan to deny truth and to deny God. They even meshed themselves into the children of Israel. And when Christ went before them, they had become the chief priests and the scribes and Pharisees, many of them. Not all of them, but many of the scribes and Pharisees of the chief priests were of this same seed line, the Kenites, the sons of Cain. And of course they did not accept Christ, but rather sought ways to trip him up and eventually did cause his crucifixion. He even referred to them in John chapter 8 as the offspring of vipers, meaning the offspring of the serpent, Satan himself. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, Mother Israel. In this case, it would be Mary. And if you recall the events surrounding Christ's birth, King Herod Antipas set out a decree in all the land that the children any newborn children up to the age of 2 or 3 should be killed, because he knew of the prophecy of a king being born, and he didn't want to be upstaged. Herod also, being the king, was handpicked. He was not of the natural seed line of the children of Israel. In other words, not of King David. Verse 5. And she, Mother Israel, brought forth a man-child, which was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Again, this happened at the crucifixion. Verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared for her of God. Where she had the place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's 1,260 days, and that has to do with the prophecy of the book of Daniel. Verse 7. In other words, the prophecy of the time of the end. Verse 7. And there was war in heaven. See, we're jumping back and forth, as I said, in pivotal time and events. There was war in heaven. Why? Because Satan was attempting to overthrow God. Michael, in support of God, and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought and his angels. Verse 8. And prevailed not. Now this would be Satan and his angels prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven for them, in other words. Verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. And that can be translated, which shall deceive the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, as we know, Satan was here upon the earth. He was the one that tempted Christ. We also know in Genesis chapter 6 that the fallen angels came here to the earth and did, in an attempt to keep the seed line of the Adamic people from bringing forth the Israelites, which would bring forth Mother Israel, and then eventually Jesus Christ. The fallen angels did come here and took wives of all the daughters of Adam, except for Noah's family. In Genesis chapter 6, the story is recorded, and this is why the earth was flooded, to purge these fallen angels and these giants from among men. There will be a second influx after Genesis chapter 6 in the book of Chronicles, where the giants were reborn again. In other words, the fallen angels came again, and there were other giants born to them. And they were killed off by the children of Israel. One specifically, which comes to mind, would be Goliath, who was slain by David. Goliath was a hybrid, a half man, half angelic. The word in Hebrew is Geber. You can go check it out for yourself. It's not a made-up word. It means a hybrid, a half man and half angelic. Verse 10. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. And the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before God night and day. Now, Satan, as you may realize, was sent back by Christ. Right after Satan tried to attempted to deceive Christ and to tempt him, Christ said, Get thee behind me, Satan, and sent him back to heaven to be at the beside the throne of God in chains to Michael. So now Satan is there once again, accusing our brethren, the faithful, which are before God. In other words, he is there with God, and every time someone does something wrong who claims to be faithful to God or faithful to Christ, he accuses them. Verse 11. And they, speaking of the election, overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they loved not their lives unto death. They overcame him by the word of their testimony. In the end time, when Satan is cast down here to play the role of the Antichrist, meaning he will appear here claiming to be Christ to a biblically illiterate world, The election shall once again, as written in Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21, shall speak against him, and shall be delivered up before kings. He, of course, being one of those kings, the head king. And they loved their lives not unto death. In other words, their lives were not as important to them as God and His Word. They're not fleshly. They're not concerned with money matters. They're not concerned with fleshly lusts and desires so much. Every human being has a certain amount to put up with. But they were not fleshly men. They were not out to steal and cheat. They were out to take forth the Word of God. Verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe, which means warning. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. The sea, of course, symbolic of the people, and as we read on in Revelation, that will be made clear. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth he hath but a short time. Verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast out into the earth, he persecuted the woman that brought forth the man-child. In other words, he persecuted Israel. You will see that that will happen again, only the persecution will not be the kind of persecution you think. It will be deception. Verse 14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times and a half time, from the face of the serpent. A time and times and a half time represents 3.5 years, which is the time originally set for Satan to have his tribulation and be here as the false Christ. But for the elect's sake, God has shortened that time, else no flesh should be saved. It has been shortened, quite frankly, to a 5-month period. But many, in their biblical illiteracy, believe this, well, she was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness, thinks that means she's going to fly away. That is not what this means. It means she was protected of God. It does not mean she flies away. I know there are many churches now that teach the any-moment rapture theory, that Jesus can return at any moment for His church, and then the Antichrist comes. But that is not correct in timeline. It's not correct with what's written in the Bible. If you believe that, I suggest you go and read for yourself and do a little study. Verse 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Now again, this is not a literal. Satan, of course, is not going to have a dam break out of his mouth. He's not going to send a river or a tsunami out of his mouth. This is referring to a flood of deception, a flood of lies. That he might cause the woman, the faithful, Israel, which means the prince that prevails with God, that it might cause the faithful to be carried away of the flood. Verse 16. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and which have the testimony of Jesus Christ. In other words, which know the truth. If you don't know the truth, Satan's not here to make war with you, because he's already got you. You're already deceived. Chapter 13. We're going to go right on into chapter 13. So Revelation chapter 13 and verse 1. We're going to see a new vision here. But this vision will be almost repetitive, but it will not be the same beast. The first beast was a prototype which happened in heaven. This beast will be upon the earth. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, meaning on the earth, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his 10 horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now I ask you to make a note that the first beast, which was also a political beast, even in heaven, yes, rose up, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns, but it only had 7 crowns. This one is upon the earth, on the sand of the sea even. And it has 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns. And listen to what is written on these heads. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Again, this beast is modeled after the first beast, which occurred in heaven at Satan's overthrow. In other words, Satan is going to try the same overthrow here on the earth as he tried in heaven. And this beast is was patterned after the template of the first beast. In other words, same method. Satan's method of operation never changes. He's all about deception and lies. Verse 2. And the beast which I saw is like unto a leopard, and his feet as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, which is Satan, gave him his power, his seat, and great authority. Now I want you to remember these 3 beasts, because they are the same beasts as mentioned in the book of Daniel in chapter 2. A leopard, a bear, and a lion. Which the leopard is symbolic, the lion is symbolic, and the bear is symbolic. The leopard signifies or symbolizes, represents the children of Cain, which have always denied Christ and denied the truth. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 32 in the Song of Moses, it says, their spot is not the spot of his children, referring to the Kenites. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of his children. They are a wicked and perverse generation. Generation, of course, meaning offspring. The bear signifies that which is stolid. The leopard, of course, the spotted animal, signifies that which, if you've ever watched a cat as it hunts, it's very patient and it waits. But when it takes over with the speed of lightning when it chases its prey. The bear, on the other hand, is a big, stolid, strong animal. The bear, in this analogy, is significant of the Red Nation, or the communist secular system, which we associate with Russia, the Russian bear. And the lion is symbolic of the king of the beasts, the head. The lion, when it takes its prey, it rips and tears its prey to pieces. So what you've got here is the children of Cain allying themselves with the secular communist system, political correctness, and becoming, as a lion, the king of the kingdom. That is why these animals are so important, because they represent powers which bring about this one world government system as a collective, which again, the sons of Cain, which have labored since the beginning against truth and against God, which have now allied themselves with the fleshly wisdom and secular interests of man, the non-religious interests, in other words, the left wing, which regards men and does not regard God. They, together with man's ignorance of truth, especially the truth of the Bible, are as a lion holding the power of the kingdom. Verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Now there are 7 heads, meaning there are 7 continents here. One of them is going to be wounded unto death, meaning it's going to represent a falling away from the one world government, a death blow to the one world government. Most likely one of these nations, one of these 7 continents, probably America, quite frankly, or Europe, will be threaten to withdraw from the one world government system, either because of war or a skirmish, or either because there are enough people who do know the truth and are against communism and secular ideology that the nation will pull away. But then the false Christ comes. Satan appears here on earth, claiming to be Christ, in all his power and majesty and beauty. As written in Ezekiel 28, Satan is a beautiful archangel. He may be evil, but his countenance, his appearance, is still the same that it ever was. So, when he comes here claiming to be Jesus Christ returned, having the power of an archangel to make it lightning and thunder, and probably having images of nail holes and what you would expect if you saw Christ, because he is the deceiver, then the entire world will wander after the beast. And this deadly wound will be healed by him, because when Satan comes claiming to be Christ, he will unite the world under him. And I'm sure to the Muslim religion, Islam, that he will appear to be Muhammad. And to the Jewish, he will appear to be their long-awaited Messiah. And maybe even to the other nations of the world, Shiva and Buddha, or whatever religion they believe. Needless to say, he will convince the whole world to wander after him. Verse 4, and it's written right here. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power to the beast, the dragon which gave power to the one world system, Satan the Antichrist. Only people won't know he's the Antichrist then. They will think he's true Christ. And he gives this beast, this one world political system, power. And they worship the beast, saying, who is likened unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? I want you to think about that. If there is a one world global government, then that means there is no free standalone nation. No sovereign nation. And who will be able to make war then? Because they will all be one government. Verse 5. And there was given unto him, speaking of the Antichrist, a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. Now this originally was a 3.5-year period, 40 and 2 months. But we know for the elect's sake that the time has been shortened to 5 months. Quite frankly, I still believe the 3.5-year period will come into play as this one world system solidifies and takes power. Verse 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. How does he blaspheme God? Well, most people think, well, he's Satan. He's the Antichrist. He's going to blaspheme God by saying God's a liar and what did God do for you? And that's not the case here. He opens his mouth in blasphemy against God because he claims that he is Christ. So that does blaspheme the name of God, because people will begin to worship the false Christ rather than the true Christ. And his tabernacle is his church, the faithful. And many of the faithful, as it is written, shall fall and worship him in ignorance, because they are biblically illiterate to the truth. And them that dwell in heaven. He's going to blaspheme them as well, because they're in heaven and not here upon the earth, where they can defend themselves and say, no, this is not the true Christ. They come when Christ comes, the true Christ. But this one shall blaspheme this tabernacle, shall blaspheme the name of God, and them that dwell in heaven, because he is claiming that he is that Christ returned. Verse 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. That means the entire world. And he shall overcome the saints for a time, for this 5 months period, because the entire world will think he is Christ, and they will be against anyone who stands up and says this is the false Christ. Again, because they are biblically illiterate. They pack themselves into churches weekly, yet they don't study the Word. They get a verse here and a verse there, or they sleep through Sunday school in church and get home to watch football or NASCAR or whatever's on TV that's more exciting to them, and never pay attention to their Father's Word. Verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That means the election. Only the elect will not be deceived. It is written there are 7,000 very elect and 144,000 election. Yet these are only spiritual numbers. Verse 9, if any man have an ear, let him hear. That means sharpen up and listen very well. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patient and the faith of saints. Why is it the patient and the faith of saints? Because the saints are patient, because they know that they have the victory in the end. He that leads into captivity is going into captivity. What does that mean? That means he that leads people into the captivity of this Antichrist shall go into captivity himself. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. What is the sword? Revelation chapter 1 verse 16. The two-edged tongue of Christ, meaning the truth. You can take the S off of this word sword and you'll have word. It means he who kills with the word, with the truth, must be killed with the truth. Well, how does that happen? For the same reason I just told you. Many people go and stand up at the pulpit and open the Bible, but they preach a false doctrine. They preach a tradition that there's going to be a rapture. They do not warn people that the Antichrist is coming first, because they don't know. And so, in preaching the word, they're going to be killed and judged by the word, because they claim to be the knowledgeable, the teachers, yet they themselves are deceived. Verse 11. And this beast coming up will follow the first beast that you saw, the seven-headed beast with 10 crowns. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Why does he speak as a dragon? Because he is the dragon. This is the arrival of the Antichrist de facto, Satan being cast here. He came up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, meaning he looks like the lamb, or he appears to be the lamb to those who don't know who he really is. But he speaks as a dragon, meaning he lies, he deceives. When Satan comes, he doesn't come as Satan. He comes claiming to be Christ. And most of us in this earth have never seen Christ with our own eyes. In fact, I would say no one has. Therefore, when Satan appears here with his beauty and makes all of us in flesh bodies look like a pile of filthy rags, and he claims that he is Christ's return, then most people are going to fall and worship him, surely out of ignorance. Verse 12. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. What was that first beast? The one world system, global government. And he causeth them in the earth, and he causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. In other words, they worship the one world system. Why? Because he is the head of it. And I'm quite sure that there's a deeper underlying message here, that Satan believes that he cannot be wounded with the sword, which is the truth, and that he shall live, but he will learn. He will see that his end shall come. Verse 13. And he, meaning Satan, the Antichrist, playing the role of Christ, doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven upon the earth in the sight of men. In other words, that's all it's going to take for some people. That's all it's going to take, is them seeing him have all these powers. I'm sure he's going to be able to make it rain, or to make the flowers grow, or to do all manner of magician's tricks, because after all, he does have the power of an archangel, which is far above that of us mortal men, yet he is not God. But his deception will work on many. Matter of fact, as you saw, the whole world shall wander after the beast. Verse 14. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, the one world system, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had a wound by a sword, and did live. In other words, a standard, like our flag. devoted to him. Verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and should cause as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now how does he do this? How does Satan, acting as though he's Jesus Christ, give power to a beast that it should speak? That means it dictates policy and sets law. One of the laws will be that as many as will not worship the image of the beast, which will be himself and this one world system, should be killed. Do you remember what Nebuchadnezzar did in Daniel chapter 2? To the Israelite children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? He commanded that if they would not fall and worship his image, his golden image, which was 60 by 60 by 60, a type of 666, that they should be tossed into the fiery furnace alive. Verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Now what does this mean? To receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. What is in your forehead? Your mind. And if you fall and worship this false Christ because you believe he's the real Christ, then you're deceived. Your mind is fooled, and he has his mark in your forehead. And your right hand, what is the hand symbolic of in the Bible? We even use an analogy now. Anything that we put our hand to, it means your works. If you receive this mark in your forehead, then you are going to work for the Antichrist, thinking that you're doing the right thing for the real Christ. And that's what this means. I know some people will say it's barcodes or a computer chip, but this is the same mark of deception which was set upon Cain. It is not the mark of a barcode. Although in the end times there may be a barcode, but this is not what is being referred to by the mark of the beast. That no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Well, what does that mean? They've got to have his mark. In other words, they've got to either be fooled, or the name of the beast, which is the one world political system, and you can't say the one world political system without saying Christ is the head of it, or the number of his name. In other words, you'll have to call him Christ. Now, anyone who knows the truth will not call him Christ, which is why it's written in Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21, that God's election shall be delivered up for a testimony against him. Against them. You shall be delivered up before kings. But take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, for it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Spirit. If you have the number of his name, that means that you believe he is Christ, and you will call him Christ. And you won't be able to buy and sell without falling and worship him. So, stock up on groceries. Be ready. Again, this is the same thing Nebuchadnezzar did in the book of Daniel. And the Antichrist is the true king of Babylon, of which Nebuchadnezzar was only a type. And when he comes, Satan, when he comes claiming that he is the Christ returned, he will fool most of the world. It is written in Isaiah 54 that more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married bride. That is exactly what is being referred to here. Verse 18. And this is to continue the thought. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Now, you have to break this down. First of all, count. Count the number of the beast. You know what count means? How do you keep track of how much money is in your bank account? You count it. You count it out. You do the math. Same thing with the Bible. You count the number of the beast by knowing who the beast is. You keep track of him. You count the number of the beast. You keep track of the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man. What man? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That man of sin, the son of perdition. People think this is going to be a human being because they see that word man there. But this is only referring to the point, or to the fact, that Satan is male of gender. He is a specific man. The man of sin, the son of perdition. Gabriel is also an archangel, as Satan is. Only Gabriel is not evil. However, Gabriel means man of God. That is all that is being referred to. Now let's go over to Revelation chapter 9. I'm going to go back a little bit. We're going to see this prophecy again from a different point of view. So chapter 9 and verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven into the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. Verse 2. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Now this smoke of the pit is referring to deception, which makes it dark. What happens when you walk in darkness? You trip and fall and you cannot see. I've made the analogy before that many of the people of the Mount St. Helens area could tell you what it's like. And probably a lot of other places where there's been a big volcanic eruption which blotted out the sun because it became as midnight. It's what's being referred to here. Walking in darkness. Verse 3. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And to them was given power as the scorpions of earth have power. Verse 4. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt any grass of the earth, or any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. In other words, only those who have not the truth. They can deceive only those who do not know. Isn't it ironic here, the way this is put, that they can't hurt any green thing, the grass of the earth, or any tree? Think of the political correctness of the modern left-wing movement in going green. Verse 5. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. Now most people, when they see this, and they have an English-only understanding, and they're biblically superstitious in their beliefs, see that verse and say, scorpions, and equate scorpions with suffering because it says it's painful to be struck by a scorpion. And they think this has got something to do with pain. So they see this as happening to the wicked, or to those who, that is, if they don't understand the true order of events, they will think that it happens to the wicked after the rapture has occurred. But then again, there is no rapture according to the way it's taught now, the any moment theory. We shall gather back to God and escape the hour of temptation, but we escape the hour of temptation not because we ran away, rather because we're not fooled, which is why it says that these locusts who have the power of the scorpion can torment men 5 months, but they cannot touch anyone who has the seal of God in their foreheads. These scorpions are not actual scorpions. No, they are men who bring about the great deception. They are not insects which give pain from a sting. That's not what this means. These are those who do not know the truth and who deceive. Those who haven't studied. Those who are ignorant to the facts of how Jesus said he would return. Those who are biblically illiterate. And they deceive with the power of a scorpion, which to understand this, you have to understand what the power of a scorpion is and how a scorpion works. When a scorpion attacks his prey, first he seizes his prey with his pincers and then stings and injects venom and digestive juices into the victim, which breaks down the tissues and organs of the victim. And the scorpion fills his prey with his venom and digestive juices till his innards, in other words, the innards of the prey, become the scorpion's meal. And he devours his prey by sucking it dry and leaves on it only a shell. So how does this analogy relate to these men who bring about deception and the one world government? Simple. Just as the scorpion, they seize upon the unsuspecting and fill them with untruth and lies, or propaganda. Usually they obtain this with flatteries, or by pandering or pleasing men. Then, as the unsuspecting believe them and support them, vote for them, what have you, the truth is taken away from them, and they become deceived and helpless as the prey is before the scorpion. Thusly, they are sucked dry, spiritually speaking. In other words, they become devoid of the truth, which leaves them open to deception. I realize for some that this may be hard to fathom, but these forces are already at work. The smoke of the pit is already billowing out upon us even now. Just look at what the aforementioned sons of Cain and secularism, political correctness have done to our world. Look at how school kids today are being indoctrinated to believe that they are nothing more than the latest step of evolved ape in a chain of evolution, instead of being taught the truth that God created us. In fact, God is openly scoffed at and laughed at in our educational institutions. And the corrupt of government are rewriting our Constitution with the intent of removing God and His influence from us altogether. And crooked lawyers are trying to take "In God We Trust" off of our money, and "One Nation Under God" from our pledge, as they wrap arm in arms with the atheists. And fleshly and perverse lifestyles which God abhors and has commanded shall not be done are being treated as commonplace. And if that's not bad enough, the men who speak of these lifestyles as being commonplace say that the faithful, Christians or people of faith, are filled with hate and bigotry for not accepting these so-called lifestyles. Look at how law and order are being broken down because justice is not done. Criminals who do murder are back on the streets. Rapists and pedophiles treated and released rather than God's laws and commands being adhered to. And because of this, we have a plague of crime which has overtaken us. Drug use, broken families, people living off government entitlements, off the backs of the taxpayers, as if they are owed a living, when God's word says, "By the sweat of your brow shall you eat bread." Do you not see this system as work as it dumbs down your youth, our youth, and propagandizes a world which has gone astray from God? Do you think the world is prepared for this Satan to appear and claim that he's Christ? How could they defend themselves? Back to the study. And we'll continue with verse 6. "And in those days men shall seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, but death shall flee from them." Why would they desire to die? Most people think, well, it's because they're being stung by the scorpion. No. It's because they will realize that they have been deceived. They will wake up and be mortified with embarrassment because of what they have allowed to happen. When you read the Bible with understanding, you must go into the original languages to understand these analogies given. You have to get past the old wrath of God, pain and punishment, torment ideology, because that is not the message being conveyed, at least in these verses. This is a warning of events to come, not a literal snapshot. Verse 7. "And the shapes of the locusts were like horses prepared to battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men." Why? because they are men. Some of them will even be angelic. These 10 leaders that come to power, the 10 leaders of the one world system, will be fallen angels of Satan's army that he brings with him, which will also be supernatural. Why are the shapes of these locusts as horses into battle? Do you know what a running chariot into battle looks like? That's what's being referred to. It means they're not going to capitulate. And their crowns were like gold. They looked royal and holy, and their faces were as the faces of men. Verse 8, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. Do you see what the analogy given here is? They have the faces of men. They have the hair of women, meaning, when you think of a woman's beauty, the hair is one of the most pleasant features of a woman. It means they have the hair of women. They're seducing, they're enticing, they're pleasant to the eyes and senses. Yet, they have the teeth of lions. Remember the lion mentioned earlier with the leopard and the bear? They will tear you into pieces, spiritually speaking. Verse 9, and they had breastplates, as if it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was the sound of chariots, of many horses running into battle. That is exactly what I was speaking of earlier. It means they have power. Verse 10, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. Again, this is how long Satan has power. This is how long he fools the earth, and this is how long this scorpion deception lasts. Again, this is written in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 about the false Christ. Verse 11, and they had a king over them. Note the lowercase k, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. There is your proof right there. That is Satan's name in Greek and Hebrew. Both of those words, Apollyon and Abaddon, mean the destroyer. That is who is being referred here. So let's jump ahead to chapter 17 of the book of Revelation before we close out here. So, Revelation chapter 17 and verse 1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, and I will show thee the judgment of the great whore which sitteth upon many waters. What is the great whore? Mystery Babylon. The city of Babylon, the one world system under Satan. And the many waters she sat on you're gonna find out are the sea, the people. Verse 2. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. Why have they committed fornication with her? Because they've hopped in bed with her. They're in bed with the wrong Christ. They didn't wait on the true husband. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. In other words, with the lies of Satan and the one world government. Verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Mystery Babylon sitting on this beast. Babylon, of course, meaning confusion. Verse 4. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and precious pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. This is symbolic here, this scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones. She looks royal. She looks like royalty, the bride of Christ. Only she's not the bride of Christ, because she has fallen and worshipped the wrong one. Verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, Mother of Harlots and Abominations of the Earth. Verse 6. And I saw the woman, which is Mystery Babylon, drunk with the blood of saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. This word admiration should be translated astonishment. She's drunk with the blood of saints. In other words, all who have been killed in the name of Christ, usually caused by the sons of Cain, from righteous Abel right down to the modern day. Verse 7. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which have 7 heads and 10 horns. Verse 8. And this will be the angel explaining it. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. In other words, the beast that thou sawest is, or was, meaning it was in the first earth age. It was Satan's first overthrow, and is not. In other words, it isn't yet, because this is a vision. Shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition, which means hell. And they shall dwell on the earth, and shall wonder whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, yet is. Okay, the beast was, because it was in the world that was. It is not yet it is, because it will be. In other words, this is a prophecy of the future given to John back in this time. Verse 9. And here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. Translate mountains, nations, on which the woman saith. Verse 10. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, which means over with. 1 is, and the other is not yet come. The one that is of course Satan, and the one that is not yet come is the Antichrist. Now, if you don't understand what I mean there, this is referring to the roles of Satan all through the Bible, from the serpent to the dragon to the tempter. But 1 is not yet come, which will be when Satan is here de facto as the Antichrist. Verse 11. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. Satan at his final release, in other words. His 7th role will be the Antichrist. His 8th will be the final role when he is released after the millennium for a short season. Then he shall go into perdition, which is why he is called the son of perdition. In other words, that'll be when Satan goes to hell and is destroyed at the end. And then God shall make a new earth. Really, it will be the same earth. He will reform it. Verse 13. These have one mind, and shall give their... Oh, wait a minute. I missed verse 12. Verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast, which is to say, the one world system under Satan. Again, these 10 kings will be 10 of Satan's generals, you might say, 10 other fallen angels, which are less powerful than Satan, but still are in support of him. And they receive power with him. Verse 13, these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength to the beast, to the one world system, and to Satan over it. Verse 14, and these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful, meaning his election, and those who have overcome. Verse 15, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. In other words, it refers to the people of the world. Verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, the people. In other words, and they shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Revelation chapter 9 verse 4. What is it that they're commanded to do? They won't hurt the grass of the earth, or any green tree, or any living thing, and they can't hurt those that have the seal of God in their foreheads. They can only deceive the whore of Babylon. Verse 17, For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. In other words, they think that they're doing Satan's bidding, and they think they're rebelling against God, but it is God's plan all along. Just as it was God's plan for his Son to come to this earth and be crucified. Verse 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Babylon, in other words. That's who we're referring to. Mystery Babylon. Mystery confusion. The kingdom of Babylon is the kingdom of confusion. Satan is the author of confusion. God is the author of peace. That is what is being referred to. Now, you can go and read the book of Daniel, specifically chapters 2, 8, and 9, and it will cover in great detail the abomination of desolation and these multi-headed beasts, which is to say, the abomination of desolation, the desolator, which is none other than when Satan appears on this earth, and his abomination is to claim that he is Christ and to march into God's temple and sit there, and as written in Isaiah chapter 14 and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, claim to be God and exalt himself above all that is called God. It is written in Daniel that he destroys wonderfully and prospers, and he stands up against the Prince of Princes, which is Jesus. How does he destroy wonderfully? Through deception. This means he doesn't come with war or weapon. Most people think that Satan is all evil and that he's going to just come here and stomp on people and jab people with pitchforks and cause welts and sores on people. No. He's going to fool them by claiming he's Christ. And he's going to act like you would expect Christ to act. But he will cause the oblation, which is the reverence to God, to cease, because people will worship him rather than worshiping the true Christ. And again, he will probably appear to the Muslims to be Muhammad, and to the Jews to be their Messiah, and to the Chinese and Japanese as Buddha, and to the Indian people as Shiva, or whatever. But either way, it makes no difference. He will deceive the whole world, as written in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. But Christ shall return, and he destroys Satan's brightness with the brightness of his coming. In other words, the coming of the true Christ, when the truth shall be revealed. At any rate, it is my prayer for you that you will go and study these things. I don't ask you to believe me just because I say it. I know how these things sounded to me when I first started hearing them and learning of them. And I'm sure they sound the same way to you, but the only way to figure this out and to be sure that you're correct is to go and do the math for yourself and go do the study for yourself. You wouldn't let someone else tell you how much money is in your bank account. That's why you go and count and keep track of it yourself. Because, as it is written in these end times, in Amos chapter 8, the famine for the end times is not for bread, which is sustenance to the mouth, food, but for hearing the word of God. May your path take you closer to God, and may you study his word and receive the gift of revelation and truth. Thank you for listening. This has been Just Thoughts.